Amy stared at her phone. The message didn't make sense. Richard Bennett had disappeared. She read it again. Then a third time. Still nothing changed. The words remained exactly where they were. Cold. Unbelievable. Impossible. For several minutes, she simply sat on the edge of her bed, staring into space. Only a month earlier, Richard had been sitting across from her at Riverside Cafe. Smiling. Laughing. Talking about life. Now nobody seemed to know where he was. Or if they did, they weren't saying. Over the following days, Amy searched online constantly. News articles appeared everywhere. Tech billionaire Richard Bennett missing. Authorities continue search for business magnate. Family offers reward for information. The story dominated headlines. Television networks discussed theories. Financial experts speculated. Social media exploded with rumors. Some believed he had been kidnapped. Others thought he had disappeared voluntarily. Nobody knew the truth. And Amy felt strangely helpless. He wasn't even someone she had known for very long. Yet somehow his absence left a hole in her life. A few weeks later, nursing school began. Amy threw herself into her studies. Anatomy. Pharmacology. Clinical skills. The workload was overwhelming. Many students struggled. Some dropped out entirely. But Amy had spent years preparing for this moment. She wasn't about to waste the opportunity Richard had given her. Whenever classes became difficult, she remembered the handwritten note. Kindness always finds its way home. Those words pushed her forward. Month after month, she worked harder than ever. And gradually she began thriving. Professors noticed her dedication. Patients responded to her kindness during clinical training. For the first time in years, Amy felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Nearly 18 months passed. Then one rainy evening, everything changed again. Amy was finishing a late hospital shift. The emergency department was unusually busy. Ambulances arrived one after another. Doctors rushed through hallways. Nurses moved constantly. The entire hospital felt alive. Suddenly, an announcement echoed through the department. Incoming trauma patient. Medical staff immediately prepared. Stretchers appeared. Equipment was checked. Amy joined the team waiting near the emergency entrance. Seconds later, the doors burst open. Paramedics rushed inside. The patient was unconscious, covered in blood. Multiple injuries. The room exploded into action. Doctors shouted instructions. Machines beeped. People moved in every direction. Amy stepped closer to help. Then she saw the patient's face. Her heart nearly stopped. Richard Bennett. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The world seemed to freeze around her. It couldn't be him. But it was. Older. Thinner. Weaker. Yet unmistakably Richard. The same man who had changed her life. The same man who had vanished. Amy stood frozen. One of the nurses noticed. "You know him?" Amy swallowed. "Yes." The nurse's expression hardened. "Then pray he survives." The next several hours felt endless. Doctors fought to stabilize him. Surgeries followed. Complications appeared. More procedures became necessary. By sunrise, Richard remained alive. But barely. Amy couldn't stop thinking about him. Questions flooded her mind. Where had he been? What happened to him? Why had he disappeared? And why had he returned looking like this? Days later, Richard finally woke up. The news spread quickly throughout the hospital. Amy wasn't supposed to visit. Patients in his condition required limited contact. Yet one afternoon, a doctor approached her unexpectedly. "Mr. Bennett is asking for you." For her? She followed the doctor upstairs. Richard's private room overlooked the city skyline. When she entered, he was sitting upright in bed. Weaker than before. But smiling. "Hello, Amy." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "You disappeared." Richard's smile faded slightly. "I know." The room fell silent. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Amy asked the question that had haunted her for nearly 2 years. "What happened?" Richard looked out the window. For the first time since she'd known him, he appeared tired. Not physically. Emotionally. The kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying secrets too long. Then he finally answered. My family happened. Amy frowned. I don't understand. Richard gave a bitter laugh. I spent 40 years building a company. He paused. Then I discovered the people closest to me only cared about what I owned. Amy listened quietly. Richard continued. My son wanted control of the company. My daughter wanted access to my assets. My business partners wanted my shares. He shook his head. Nobody wanted me. The words hit Amy harder than she expected. Because she believed him. She had seen loneliness before. She had lived it herself. Richard looked directly at her. Do you know why I kept coming back to that cafe? Amy slowly shook her head. Because you treated me like a person. The room became silent again. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. Richard smiled sadly. Most people only saw a billionaire. You saw an old man drinking coffee. Amy didn't know what to say. Richard reached into the bedside drawer. Then handed her a small sealed envelope. What is this? Richard's expression grew serious. Something important. Amy looked at the envelope. Then back at him. What do you mean? For a brief moment, uncertainty flashed across Richard's face. The kind of expression people wear when they're afraid. Genuinely afraid. Then he spoke quietly. If anything happens to me. Amy's stomach tightened. Richard continued. I need you to open it. The room suddenly felt colder. What are you talking about? Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the hospital door. As if checking whether someone might be listening. Then he leaned forward. And whispered something that made Amy's blood run cold. They know I survived.